Welcome to the Tokenized Economy. Here is today's explainer on From Tokenized Equities to the broader tokenization landscape.
All right, let's jump right in. We just wrapped up a pretty deep dive into the world of tokenized equities. So to really set the stage for what's coming next, let's do a quick recap of the four main models we're seeing get built out in the real world.
Okay, so first up, you've got the CSD-led model. This is where the big post-trade providers like the DTCC are basically extending their traditional record-keeping onto the blockchain. Next, you have the exchange-led model, where institutions like NASDAQ and the NYSE are building tokenization right into their trading infrastructure. Then there's the issuer-native model, where a company like Galaxy Digital actually puts its own equity directly on-chain. And finally, we looked at the broker-dealer model, which is where firms like Robinhood or Kraken create a way for you to get blockchain-based access to traditional equities.
But it's not all just about the trading. There's this other absolutely critical layer that often gets overlooked, and that's governance and servicing. We're talking about things like proxy voting, investor communications, and handling corporate actions. And we've actually seen a huge milestone here recently. Broadridge enabled on-chain proxy voting for Galaxy Digital's tokenized shares. This is really one of the first times we're seeing this kind of critical governance function working in the wild for a tokenized security.
So, after digging into the massive, and I mean massive, $140 trillion equity market, what did we really learn? Let's boil it all down to the two most important takeaways.
The first key insight is this. There's a common misconception that tokenization is this single, one-size-fits-all pathway. But that's not what's happening. The reality is that we're seeing a bunch of parallel evolutions, with each one redefining a different part of the financial system.
And the second major takeaway is just as crucial. Tokenization isn't about ripping out and replacing the infrastructure that's already there. It's really about extending it. Those core functions, like record keeping and settlement, are still essential. They're just being extended onto these new blockchain rails.
So equities are obviously a huge and very visible area of focus. But here's the thing. While tokenizing that market is incredibly important, the significant traction, where things are really moving from theory to production scale, is actually happening in other, less visible asset classes.
And this brings us right to the central question for today's explainer. Beyond all the public discussion around equities, where is tokenization really scaling right now? Let's take a look at the data.
Let's start with fixed income. In this space, we've already seen over $5 billion in tokenized issuance. And what's really interesting is that a lot of that growth has been driven by strong participation from Asia. Now, let's look at repo markets. This is pretty staggering. Blockchain-based platforms here are already processing hundreds of billions of dollars in daily volume. I want to be really clear. This is not a test or a pilot. This is happening right now at a massive operational scale. So what's the foundation for all of this? Well, it's basically on-chain cash. We're talking about the stablecoin market. It's approaching a global market size of $300 billion, and it provides that essential liquidity that really makes the tokenized economy work.
All right, so when you look at all those numbers, it's pretty obvious that tokenization is way past the experimental stage. And that's exactly why, in our upcoming explainers, we're going to broaden our focus way beyond equities and explore where else tokenization is making a real impact. We're going to be diving into bonds and fixed income, repo and collateral markets, tokenized deposits and stablecoins, commercial paper and short-term funding, and even private credit, loans, and investment funds. Each one of these is its own fascinating world with its own set of rules and structures.
So what's the big picture here? Let's take a second to connect what we've just talked about with where we're headed next on this journey. It's actually pretty simple. In our last sprint, we really focused on how tokenized equity markets are being built. Now we're going to shift our focus to where tokenization is already working at scale and, maybe more importantly, digging into why it's succeeding in these specific areas.
So here's the crucial point. While equities get a lot of attention, they represent ownership, they're what people see, the real momentum today is building behind the scenes. It's in the core plumbing of the financial markets. We're talking collateral, funding, and fixed income. That's where tokenization is becoming truly operational. And we're going to start with one of the most active areas of them all. In our very next explainer, we will be diving straight into the tokenization of bonds and fixed income markets.
Be sure to subscribe for more short explainers on blockchain, tokenization, and financial markets. And please, share any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in the comments below. Thanks for watching.